Okay, good morning. Senior 3s, you can see a number of you are joining. Please let's join a bit fast because you have a lot to do. I know when you are going home, we gave you some work to go with, but remember we had two different streams, so it is hard for us to discuss the work we went with. That's why I came up with a separate topic, a new topic that we are going to discuss this morning, and that is going to be animal health. Animal health, or what you call livestock health. Now, animal health is not different from any health matters that you know, and it's one of the most interesting topics because students usually perform well in it. Remember, as human beings, we are animals, and the health of animals is not much different from our own health, and because of that, students find this topic a bit easy. Okay, so with the animal health, there are not too many things that we need to know here, but if you can get the general concept very well, it can be very easy for you to understand this topic. Okay, so let's first begin by understanding what health is. Okay, now health is the state of the body operating normally. Okay, if the body systems run normally without any deviations, without any challenges, we say that the body is healthy. Okay, now animal health is very key in livestock farming because the productivity of animals, how much products we get from these animals, how fast the animals grow, depends on many things, but most importantly on their health. Okay, if an animal is healthy, it will grow faster. That means, for example, if you're a beef farmer, you're not going to spend a lot of money on that animal because it will grow quickly and you sell it off quickly so that you can earn money as early as possible. Then in terms of productivity, if an animal is healthy, for example, you're keeping maybe a dairy animal. I think you remember examples of dairy animals, for example, the Frisian. If you're keeping a Frisian and it's in good health, what is going to happen is that it's going to provide you as much milk as possible. So this concept of animal health or livestock health is very important, and we need to understand it really well, because all that we do in livestock farming, the health plays a very key role. Okay, so there are cases when you can say an animal has poor health. If you say an animal has poor health, it means it has some challenges. Its body processes are not proceeding as expected. I hope that is clear. Now, I want you to tickle your minds a bit. As human beings, we can easily tell that we're in good health or we're in poor health. Now, the signs of good health in animals or in livestock are not much different from the signs of good health in humans. That's why I say this topic is interesting. If you forget, if you fail to remember, okay, some of these ideas in animals, remember you are an animal. So you use yourself, okay, to generate some of the required aspects here. Now, for example, how do you tell that you are healthy? Signs of good health. Let's first forget about the animals. How do you tell, as a human being, how do you tell that I'm in good health? Okay? So, once you can answer that, then it is very easy for you to tell when an animal is either in good health or in poor health. Okay? We are going to have one aspect here. After knowing what health is, I said health is well-being. Okay? And good health is when the body processes proceed well or properly, while poor health is when there are challenges in the different body processes. So, our first thing that we need to understand here, we need to know the signs of good health. Signs of good health in livestock or in animals. How do you look at an animal as a farmer, or as someone who has studied agriculture and has understood it? How do you look at an animal and tell that this animal is having a good health? Okay? So, when you are looking at the signs, things that you can see that can tell you that this animal is in good health, we consider a number of aspects. For example, you look at the appetite of the animal. Just like you when you're sick, when you are of poor health, when your health is not good, for example, maybe you have fever or you have malaria, your appetite for food is going to be poor, okay? While someone who is normal, someone who is in good health will have good appetite. So one of the signs of good health is good appetite. When you look at an animal and it's feeding aggressively, it's enjoying what it's eating, it wants to eat more and more, then you can say that that particular animal is healthy. Then the other second thing we look at, or we can consider here, is the response to different stimuli. For example, touch, okay, or sound. If you touch the animal, what does it do? Does it respond? If you make sound, does it respond? Does it listen? Okay? If the animal is in good health, it will respond well to different stimuli. But when it's in poor health, you may even touch it and does not show you any kind of response. Okay? Then you look at the posture. I hope you understand what posture means. Posture is the appearance. Okay? Now, if you are normal, there's a way you look. The word there is posture. If you are normal, there's a way you look. And if you're sick, try to remember, at least in our homes, one of us have fallen sick, at least. If someone is sick, the way a sick person looks is not the way a normal person looks. The body posture, appearance of the body, how the animal presents itself. If it is in poor health, the posture will not be normal. It will not look as normal as always. Okay? Then the other sign of good health is good sight. An animal with good health is able to see items that are in its what? Its surrounding or its environment. An animal that is of poor health cannot be able to ably see whatever is around it. Okay? So we need to look at this, even the body temperature of the animal. Okay? Now, I know you may be wondering whether we take temperatures of animals. Yes, we do. Now, there are temperature ranges for different, there are normal body temperature ranges, like for a human being. I think you know ours is around 37 degrees Celsius. For different animals also have different normal temperature ranges, okay? Now, like for cattle, it's supposed to be around 38.6 there, degrees Celsius. If you take the temperature of an animal and you find that it is either too low or too high, then that animal is of poor health. But if it has the normal body temperature, then you can confidently say that that animal is of good health. Okay? The other thing you can look at is the dung or the urine, or in general what you call the excreta. Okay? Urine there's normal color for urine, and there's normal state for dung. Okay? Normal dung, even for human beings, what we would call feces, normal dung is not supposed to be too watery or too solid. Okay? It's supposed to have a good balance between the solidity and the liquidity. Now, if an animal produces dung that is either too hard or too watery, then that animal is of poor health. But if the dung is normal, the way it is supposed to be always, then we can easily tell that that animal is of good health. Okay? Then, like I was introducing this topic of animal health, I talked about some aspect of productivity. Now, productivity, the amount of products that the animal gives you. For example, milk. If an animal is of poor health, okay, the milk that it will give you is going to be less than usual. But if it is of good health, its productivity is going to be high. So when you look at an animal and it is having a high productivity as usual, then we say it has good health. But if the productivity is less or it drops, then you can consider it to be having a poor health. Okay? So there are many things you can look at here. Even the pliability, the nature of the skin or height. If an animal is normal, its skin is usually smooth and pliable. Smooth, pliable, shiny, easy to move. Pliable means easy to move. Okay? If you say the skin is pliable, it's not too hard. Okay? But if it's of poor health, the skin will be a bit different. Then when you look at the mouth region, or what we call the muzzle, it's supposed to be moist. Okay? So there are a number of signs. We're not going to complete the whole lesson looking at these signs because we have a lot of things to do. But I wanted you to have a proper understanding of these different aspects, or what we are calling the signs of good health. Look at an animal, consider its normal state, and any deviations from that are signs of poor health. That's why I'm saying that any deviations from the above signs of good health are indicators of poor health in animals. So once you know the signs of good health, okay? Once you know the signs of good health, and you find out that your animal is not presenting those signs, that will imply that the animal has developed ill or poor health. Okay? We usually don't like saying that the animal has become sick. The word sickness, we prefer to use it for the case of human beings, but for these animals, we prefer to say that the animal has either poor health, we say it has poor health, or it has ill health. We don't like saying the animal has fallen sick. Okay? So, now, if I may ask you to think a bit, as we proceed, if I may ask you to think a bit about any signs of poor health, I hope you can be able to do what? To present them. Okay? Because like there's an assignment I've given you there, you're supposed to try to give up at least some signs of poor health in animals. It's just a matter of you altering those signs of good health. For example, if the temperature is normal, we say the animal has good health. If the temperature is abnormal, either too low or too high, we say the animal has poor health. I believe you can be able to, and you will be able to do that. Okay? So after knowing the signs of good health and the signs of poor health in animals, I would like us to now proceed to some other concept of disease. Now, what makes an animal develop bad health? The bad health is usually because of disease. Okay? And we say an animal is diseased if its body processes are not functioning, they are not functioning normally as the way they are supposed to do. There we say the animal is diseased. Okay, for the case of disease, I believe you know that. But what do I want so much about disease here? My main aim of us talking about disease here is to classify, categorize the different livestock diseases. So we have diseases, yes, but we have different categories. We have different types. Okay? Different types of livestock diseases. I know in your lower secondary or in your primary, you must have come across a number of livestock diseases, things like anthrax, TB, Nagana, Newcastle disease, East Coast fever. There are different types of diseases, as we shall see towards the end, because we shall have a proper summary of these different diseases. But what I want us to understand now is that these different diseases can be classified into different forms depending on how serious they are, depending on what causes them, and how their duration. Okay? So we classify them depending on the seriousness, the duration, and the cause of the diseases. Okay? So under the diseases, we have different categories, we have different types, we have different groups of diseases. Okay? Now, let's begin understanding these categories one by one. Now, in the world, you know, there's something that is going on. There's what we call COVID. And related to that COVID, there's a word that people use commonly now, that COVID is a pandemic. What does a pandemic mean? I know many of us didn't know what that word pandemic means, but these days it is at our fingertips. So, same story here. We have different diseases, but we have to categorize them. Okay? So, by the end of this lesson, at least we should be able to categorize different diseases, and after our lesson, we shall try to look for examples of these different categories of livestock diseases or animal diseases. Now, there are diseases that we call infectious. They are what we call infectious diseases. Infectious. Now, we have livestock diseases that are infectious. But what is an infectious disease in livestock science here? Now, we say a disease is infectious if it is caused by a living agent. An infectious disease is a disease that is caused by a living agent or a living thing, a pathogen. Infectious diseases are caused by pathogens. They are caused by living agents. And these pathogens are things like the viruses, the bacteria, and the protozoa, among others. So, any disease that is caused by a living agent like bacteria, a virus, a protozoa, qualifies to be what we call an infectious disease. Okay? So you should be asking your minds now, of the different diseases of animals that you know, which ones do you think are infectious? We are saying an infectious disease is a disease that is caused by a living agent. Okay? So, after knowing what an infectious disease is, we are saying it is caused by a living agent. Now, for the case of the second category, we have what we call non-infectious diseases. 1, infectious diseases caused by living agents. 2, non-infectious diseases. Now, the non-infectious diseases are diseases that are caused by any other thing other than living agents. Infectious, caused by living agents. Non-infectious, caused by any other thing other than a living agent. Now, you may be wondering, are there diseases that are caused by things that are not living agents? You may be thinking that all diseases are caused by bacteria, all diseases are caused by viruses or protozoa. But we have diseases that are not caused by these living agents. Okay? So diseases that are not caused by living agents are non-infectious diseases. The good example here are diseases that result from poor nutrition, poor feeding. Okay? If you don't feed an animal well, it can suffer from a disease. Okay? But poor feeding is not as a result of these living agents. We shall be coming to those examples. Then we have category 3 of these livestock diseases. They are those we call communicable. They are the livestock diseases that are called communicable diseases. Communicable. We have what we call communicable diseases. 1, infectious. 2, non-infectious. 3, communicable. Now, the communicable diseases are diseases that can be transmitted in two ways. Okay? They can be transmitted either directly or indirectly. Any disease that can be transmitted either directly or indirectly is a communicable disease. Now, you may be wondering what indirect and direct there mean. Okay? Indirect and direct. Now, when I say indirect and direct, I'm more of talking about the contact. So a disease that can be transmitted through direct or indirect contact is a communicable disease. Okay? Now, direct, for example, when animals come into touch. Okay? When their bodies come into touch. Okay? When they get into contact, we say that is direct. While indirect transmission can take this format. For example, you are feeding animals using feed troughs. You put your feed troughs there. A diseased animal comes, feeds first, okay, from that feed trough. Then an animal that is healthy comes and feeds after the diseased one feeding. What will happen is that even the healthy one is going to become diseased. For example, let's use a common example. Like in schools, it's common, flu. Now, if a colleague has flu and you are sharing maybe a plate or a cup, chances are high that you're also going to get disease. But you have not come into contact with that person directly. You can try to avoid the person, but at the end you forget. You use a utensil, maybe a plate or a fork or any other thing that that person used. Then you can also get the disease. Now that is indirect transmission. So diseases that can be transmitted through both direct and indirect channels, we call them communicable diseases. Then the fourth group are what we call the contagious diseases. Contagious. We have what we call the contagious diseases. Now, that word contagious, when do we say a disease is contagious? Now, a contagious disease is a disease that can only be spread through direct contact. Only through direct contact. A contagious disease is one that can be transmitted through only direct contact. Indirect contact, it can't be transmitted. But when you come into contact, when you come into touch with the diseased, for example, if you're a human being and you come into contact with another human being that has that disease, then you'll get that disease. Such diseases, we call them contagious diseases. They are only spread through contact. If you do not come into contact, you can't get that particular disease. Okay? So, communicable, we said these ones can be spread through both direct and indirect. Direct and indirect. While the contagious can only be transmitted through direct contact. Then, related to contagious, we have what we call non-contagious. Infectious, non-infectious. Contagious, non-contagious. Now, I know you can guess that one. If the contagious ones can be transmitted through only direct contact, what do you think the non-contagious diseases are? Now, the non-contagious are diseases that can be spread through indirect contact. Direct contact, contagious diseases. Indirect, we call them the non-contagious diseases. Okay? So, as we proceed, we shall have a summary of that, but I want us to be following. Let's follow very, very closely. We said infectious, diseases that are caused by living agents. Non-infectious, diseases that are caused by any other thing other than a living agent. Communicable diseases, we said, are diseases that can be spread through both direct and indirect contact. Contagious diseases are those that can only be spread through direct contact. Non-contagious diseases are those that can be spread through indirect contact. Okay? We shall be having examples of these diseases. Then we have what we call epidemic diseases. Epidemic diseases. Now, you have heard of that word, an epidemic. Epidemic diseases are those that spread very fast. A disease that spreads very fast, very quickly, and covers a large area within a very short period. We call it an epidemic disease. Spreads very fast and affects a large number of animals, okay, within a short time. Okay, we call those ones epidemic diseases. Then, related to epidemic disease, now these concepts, you need to have time and try to internalize them because they confuse. We are talking of epidemic diseases being diseases that spread very fast and attack a large number of animals within a short time. Related to the epidemic, remember I've just talked about epidemic. Epidemic, diseases that spread very fast, attacking many animals, but within a short time. Okay? Then there are other diseases that are called endemic. Epidemic, endemic. Now, endemic diseases are those that are dangerous. Okay? They're very dangerous to both man and animals. Okay? And once they attack the animals, they cause very, very big losses to the farmers. Okay? Things like some of you who know swine, the pigs, there's what we call swine fever. A swine fever is an example of an endemic disease. Once it attacks, it causes a lot of havoc. It makes the pigs to die in very, very large numbers unless something is done very quickly. Okay? So these diseases that are dangerous to both man and animals but cause serious losses, we call them the endemic diseases. Swine fever, things like anthrax, the Newcastle disease in poultry, rinderpest in cattle, and the like. Okay? Then there is another category of disease that we call the zoonotic. These diseases are many. The zoonotic diseases, Z-O-O-N-O-T-I-C, zoonotic diseases. Now you may be asking yourself again, what are these? Now, these zoonotic diseases are diseases that attack animals. Yes, they attack animals, but can be transmitted to human beings as well. So a disease is called zoonotic when it can attack animals, but can be transmitted to humans. If you're a farmer and you're taking care of the animals, if the animals get that disease and if you are not careful, you will also get such a disease. Such diseases, we call them the zoonotic diseases. They attack animals but can also attack humans. Now, there's a common disease that I believe most of you know. There's what we call, most people call it brucella, but we call it the brucellosis or contagious abortion. Brucellosis is usually transmitted through the milk. If you take milk, from fresh milk, for example, from an animal that is suffering from brucellosis, chances are high that you, the human being, is also going to get that particular disease. I think you have heard of the disease they call brucella. Okay? Then we have what we call sporadic diseases. I think that is our last one. Sporadic diseases. Now, the sporadic diseases are diseases that appear at rare times. They appear at rare times and in isolated places. Rare times. Okay? Just once in a while, in a few areas here and there. Such diseases, we call them sporadic. Sporadic diseases. They appear once in a while in isolated areas. So learners, I want us to have a proper understanding of these concepts. Know what an infectious disease is, because once you understand, I'm taking a lot of time here because once you get this, what you are going to do ahead, becomes much simpler. Okay? So know what an infectious disease is. We said an infectious disease is one caused by a living agent. Non-infectious, a disease that is caused by any other thing other than a living agent. Communicable disease, we said, is a disease that can be spread through both direct and indirect contact. Then contagious disease, we said, is a disease that can only be spread through direct contact. Then we looked at another category of diseases here. We looked at the non-contagious. We said a diseases or a non-contagious disease is one that can be spread through indirect contact. We looked at another category of diseases. We looked at the epidemic diseases. We said they are diseases that are dangerous to man and can cause serious losses. We looked at, yes, the epidemic, dangerous to man, cause losses, but they spread very fast within a short time. The endemic, we have just talked about that. We said they are diseases, yes, they are dangerous to man, but they cause serious losses. And I gave you a good example here, the swine fever. Then we have zoonotic diseases. They attack animals, but can attack humans as well. So you need to have a proper understanding of these different classes of diseases. Because at the end, after we have looked at the different livestock diseases, I will want you to be able to fit each of these diseases under these different categories. And once you can do that, then that will be so beautiful. Now, so now we have known the categories of diseases. What causes these diseases? Now, I know when I talk of causes of diseases, you're already thinking of the different, those who have been very attentive, you're already thinking of the different living agents we talked about. You're already thinking of nutritional deficiencies and the like, which is very good. But I want us to be a bit careful here. When you are talking about these different causes of diseases, for a proper understanding, we usually prefer to categorize them into two. So causes of diseases is our next item here, but causes of diseases is our next item, but what you need to know is that for proper understanding, we usually categorize these causes into two. We group them into two. And for examination purposes, usually we do not just put the block question, give the causes of diseases. We prefer to tie you to one of the causes, okay? One of the categories of the causes. So, whatever you're thinking of is not wrong, but what I want you to understand is that we categorize the causes into two main groups, okay? So, they are what we call indirect causes. Indirect causes of disease. Called the indirect causes. Sometimes we call them the predisposing factors. Predisposing factors. Then, the second category are the direct causes. Now, when you say the direct causes, these are the real causes of disease. Direct causes or the determinant causes of disease. They are the real causes. Whatever you've been thinking of, like the viruses, the bacteria, the protozoa, those ones follow here. The real causes of diseases. But let's pay much attention here. Because these ones, at least you have an idea, but I want us to pay much attention on the indirect or what we call the predisposing factors. Now, you know, before you suffer from a disease, there are things that make it easy for disease to attack you. Okay? Even as human beings. That's why in your homes, there are things that parents emphasize that let's be clean, maintain good hygiene, maintain good sanitation, please eat on time, things like that. Now, These indirect causes, or what you call predisposing factors, are conditions, situations that make it easy for disease to attack. They themselves do not cause the diseases, but because they make it easy for disease to attack you, we qualify them as causes of diseases. So I want us to sharpen our minds, try to think, what are some of those things? What are the things that can make it easy for disease to attack you? Those are what we call indirect. They are not themselves causing, they are not like these agents that are causing the diseases here, but they make it easy for disease to attack you. Okay? So we call them indirect causes, or what we call predisposing factors. To predispose is like putting you at risk. Okay? What things can put you at risk of getting disease or catching disease? What things can make it easy for disease to attack your body are what we call the indirect or predisposing factors. So one of the things is, for example, I've been talking about homes, sanitation, poor sanitation. Okay? It is very easy. I want us to try to remember, it's quite easy for disease to attack people who live in a dirty environment. I think you believe that. Disease can easily attack people who live in a dirty environment or in a sanitation that is poor or hygienic, because that is where most of these the living agents that cause disease prefer to stay, or even the vectors that transmit disease prefer to stay. For example, the flies, they move from place to place carrying germs. So one of the predisposing factors, one of the things that makes it easy for disease to attack is poor sanitation. 2, poor housing conditions. For example, you're keeping animals in an area that is that's not properly ventilated. Okay? Maybe the area is even small. Remember, in the farm buildings, you must have studied about qualities of good livestock house. One of them is that it should be well ventilated, and I believe the other is that it should be spacious enough. Now, let's take an example. You are keeping animals in an area that is very small, without ventilators, without windows. Saturation of air is not proper. Okay? Or the area is very small, the animals are compacted, and we remember we have just said that there are diseases that can be spread through direct contact. You have overpacked these animals. What is going to happen? Okay? The animals are going to be, they will become uncomfortable, and once they become uncomfortable, their immunity will lower, and once the immunity lowers, chances are high that disease will easily attack. Or even the poor housing conditions. Let's talk of the ventilation, poor air saturation. There are diseases that are respiratory, as we shall be seeing. They attack the respiratory system of these animals. And once there is no proper gaseous exchange, what is going to happen is that the animals will suffer from such diseases. Then there's the other concept about the indirect causes is what we call heredity. At this point in time, I don't know whether you have already studied genetics in your biology, but heredity is to do with parents, your parents and ancestors. Now, there are diseases that are passed on. There are diseases that can be passed on from the parent to the offspring. Okay? There are diseases that can be passed on from the parent to the offspring, and there are cases where some animals, remember in livestock improvement, we said that the characteristics, we talked of the characteristics of offsprings sometimes being determined by the characteristics of their parents. Now take an example. if the parent has poor resistance to disease, what is going to happen is that there's a high likelihood that the offspring is also going to have a poor resistance to disease. Now, if the parent animal has a poor resistance to disease, the offspring that it produces is also going to have a poor resistance to disease, and such an offspring is going to be at a higher risk of getting disease as compared to one that has a proper resistance to disease. Okay, so you need to understand this. Sometimes we suffer from diseases not because we are staying in a poor environment, not because we are feeding poorly, not because we are living in poor housing conditions, but because that particular disease was there in the lineage of our parents. Some of the diseases can be passed on from the parent to the offspring. So, if a parent has a particular disease and produces an offspring, chances of that offspring having that hereditary disease are high. Then the other indirect or predisposing factor is age. Age, yes. Now, compared to you, me, I'm an old man. There are diseases that can easily attack me, but for you may be able to resist them. Okay? While there are diseases that can easily attack you, and I can also be able to resist them. Okay? So age plays a very big role when it comes to diseases. If it is a disease that comes in advanced age, only the old animals will suffer from that disease. If it is a disease that affects animals at a young age, now for example at a young age, for you may be thinking that there are no diseases that can attack you at young age. Let me give you an example. A simple example here, stomach upsets. Those stomach upsets disturb mainly younger animals, while the experienced or the mature animals usually suffer less from these stomach upsets. So age is an indirect cause of disease, okay? Because there are diseases that attack different ages. Then the other indirect or predisposing cause of disease is sex. Yes. You know, when you say sex, now your minds are... But we cannot say gender. We cannot say gender in animals. Remember, gender is to do with the roles that the society assigns to the males and the females. So in animals, we cannot talk of gender. That's why we're talking of sex. And sex is that being either male or female. Being male or female. That biological being male or female is what we call sex. These two things confuse sex and gender, but for us we are talking of sex. Male, female. Gender is to do with the roles that the society gives to the males and the females. But for us our emphasis here is on the sex. So, how does sex become a predisposing factor? How does sex become a predisposing cause of disease? It's simple. There are diseases that attack particular sex, while they do not attack the other sex. The other sex may be carriers, but the effect of the disease is not realized in them. Take an example. In livestock, in cattle, we have a disease like mastitis. Now, mastitis mainly manifests itself in the females. Okay? The males can carry it, but the effects are properly seen in the females. So, if an animal is a female, it is predisposed to a disease like mastitis just by it being female. Its chance of suffering from mastitis increases. So there are diseases that attack the males, while there are diseases that attack the females. Even the brucellosis in a cattle, it mainly the effects are mainly seen in what? In the females other than the males. Okay? Then the other predisposing factor is the poor environment in which the animal is living. Okay, for example, poor weather conditions. Okay, poor weather conditions. Just even as human beings, if these animals are kept in areas that are either too hot or too cold, chances of them suffering from disease is going to increase, because the animals are going to become uncomfortable. Once they become uncomfortable, their body immunity will lower, and once immunity lowers, remember, we shall be looking at immunity sometime ahead, but it's that ability of the body to do what? To resist or fight disease. So, if these animals become uncomfortable, chances are high that their body immunity is going to lower, and then they will easily suffer from diseases. Okay? Then, even stress. There's this aspect here. Yes, you learners like saying, I'm stressed, we are stressed. Stress is not a good thing. Even in animals, stress is not good. Now, stress is that condition of discomfort, okay? Being uncomfortable. Once the body is stressed, this stress negatively affects the body's what? Immunity. Once an animal is stressed. Now, causes of stress and the like, we shall look at stress, especially in poultry, it is there. The stress makes the animal to become uncomfortable, and that disorganization lowers the immunity, and once the immunity is low, chances are high that you will suffer from disease. Then the other obvious one is poor feeding. Poor feeding means feeding animals on a diet that is, remember we looked at livestock nutrition. We said livestock are supposed to be fed on a balanced diet, on a diet that contains the different necessary nutrients that animals require for proper growth. If you're feeding an animal poorly, what is going to happen is that its immunity is going to be low. Remember, in this pandemic, in this period we are having, we are advised to eat a lot of fruits, eat a lot of vegetables, take warm things and the like. All that is aimed at boosting the immunity. So, in livestock, you also need to feed these animals well so that they can build immunity and be able to resist disease. Okay? Then, another thing which looks simple here, but is serious, is giving animals water that is contaminated. Okay? Dirty water, contaminated water, or infected water. If animals are given water that is not clean enough for them to drink, then there you are exposing these animals to diseases. So there may be many other indirect causes or things that make it easier for diseases to attack animals, but let's try to go with that or with those. But what I want you to underline or underscore here is that we have what we call indirect causes, or what we call the predisposing factors, things that make it easier for disease to attack. Then we have what we call the direct causes, or the real causes of disease. So after looking at the indirect causes, things that predispose, things that make it easier for diseases to attack, now let's turn our attention to the direct or the determining causes of diseases. Now, these determining causes of diseases, these ones are not much complicated, and they are not too many. So usually people find it easy to understand. One of the determining causes or direct causes of diseases, one of the direct causes of diseases is infections. So we have the infections, and these infections are caused by the living agents, and we looked at our examples of our living agents. Remember, infections, infectious diseases. We said infectious diseases are those that are caused by living agents. So these infections are as a result of living agents like the bacteria, the viruses, and let's say the protozoa. So these infections are determining or determinant causes of diseases. They are caused by the living agents. Okay. Then what do they do? Once an animal has an infection, its body will not function normally, and once the body does not function normally, then we say the animal has disease or the animal is diseased. Then the second one are the poisons. Poisons can cause disease. I think you know what a poison is. In simple terms, you can say a poison is any substance that has the ability of destroying life. Once you take it, life can be destroyed. We call that one a poison. Okay? It's another direct cause of disease. Then 3, injuries. Okay? Injuries, I think many of us have got, or at least you have ever got an injury. I'm not saying that getting an injury is fun or it's a good thing, but yeah, we are human. Injuries are always there. You can get them once in a while. Now, once you get an injury, then chances of you having disease are high. Then we have what we call the nutritional deficiencies. That's why we emphasize that we feed animals on a balanced diet, just like in humans. I told you that this topic, you cannot separate it from us human beings. Once you don't feed well, once you lack some particular nutrients, okay, what is going to happen is that you can end up suffering from a disease. Okay? And once you suffer from a disease, then we say your health has become poor. Okay? Fine. Then another important concept here. Now, we have known what a disease is. We have categorized these diseases. We have known how to tell whether an animal is healthy or not. We have looked at what causes these diseases, and we have said the causes of diseases are grouped into 2. The real causes and conditions or factors that make it easy for disease to attack. Okay? Now, I want us to proceed to something else. Let's learn how these diseases spread. How do diseases spread on a farm? You're in a home, maybe you're 3 or 5. How do diseases spread at home? Spread of diseases. How? How do these diseases spread? How do they move from one animal to another? In your home, a sister or brother has flu. How do you get that flu? I'm not saying that you go and get the flu, but how do you get it? How does it reach you? It's the same thing here. The way diseases spread in humans is not much different from how diseases spread in livestock. Okay? So, in case you have any people who have issues issues about what you have discussed and they are not very clear, we're about to go to the chat room and we try to share ideas there. So, back to our business here. How do diseases spread from one animal to another? We need to understand that. Spread of disease. And it's a simple thing. Once you know once you get to understand how they spread, then we shall be able to control these particular diseases. So, let's try to run through the different ways through which diseases spread. I want us to understand these different ways because if you know how a disease spreads, then it is very easy for you to counter or try to do things that can help avoid the spread of the disease. So, let's try to run through some. One of the ways through which diseases spread is through introduction of diseased animals onto your farm. introduction of diseased animals onto your farm. Remember, in livestock improvement, we say that introduction means bringing an animal from another farm onto your farm. There we say you have introduced an animal. Okay? If I have this is my farm, and a neighbor has a farm there. This is mine, farm A, and a neighbor has farm B. If I bring in an animal from this farm into my farm, then I say I've introduced an animal onto my farm. Now, we are saying if you introduce an animal that is diseased onto your farm, then that animal is going to bring that disease to the animals that you have on your farm. Okay? So introduction of diseased animals on a farm is one way through which these livestock diseases do what? Spread. Then two, now, one we are saying introduction of diseased animals. Then two, introduction of animals that have just recovered from disease. Okay? Such animals are usually carriers. It's not good to bring in an animal that has just recovered from disease. For example, someone has been there, has been suffering from flu, but has stopped sneezing. You don't take chances that that person has actually cured. No. Such animals usually are carriers. If an animal has just recovered from disease, it does not mean that it has cured within that short time. Curing takes time. So if you bring an animal that has just recovered from disease, it can also carry that disease to your farm. Okay? Then the other way through which these animal diseases spread is through, remember we said some diseases spread through contact. If animals come into contact, one which is diseased with one which is not diseased, what is going to happen is that the diseased one is going to pass on the disease to the one which is not diseased. Direct contact. Even in humans, we have diseases that are spread through direct contact. Remember, we said those that are spread through direct contact, what do we call them? We said we call them contagious diseases. So, take an example. You have animal A sick, animal B healthy. When A and B come into contact, this one will pass on the disease to the other. Okay? So direct contact with one which is infected. Okay? Then disease can also be spread through, indirectly through things like the feeders. You know what feeders are, I believe. You know what drinkers are. Shall be doing more about this when we are handling our practical aspects. Now, these feeders, where you provide feeds, we don't give animals feeds in plates. We give them in feeders, or what we call the feed troughs. Okay? So, if a diseased animal, like I said earlier, if a diseased animal feeds in a particular feed trough, maybe here, first, then a normal one comes to feed. That the normal one can get disease indirectly. Okay? So what does that mean? As a wise farmer, you must always clean. You must always clean the feed troughs well as you're going to feed these animals. And be keen. That's why we started by looking at the signs. Be keen. Be able to look at an animal and say, oh, I think there's a problem with this animal. Once you realize that an animal has a problem, it's a good practice to isolate it, remove it. Let's not first run through culling. No. You first isolate for some time. Try to find out whether actually it is diseased or not. When it is separated from the others. Okay? I know some of you are now itching with the word culling. Remember, we looked at culling as when we were looking at different livestock management practices. We said culling is permanently removing an animal from a group of animals due to a particular reason. But isolation, you isolate. Keep separated from the others as you study the situation. Once you realize the animal has no sickness, you can bring it back. Okay? So, direct, indirect contact, we should be very careful there. Then, disease can also be spread through air. Some diseases are respiratory. They can be spread through air from one animal to another. We shall be looking at that. We also said through drinking water, which is contaminated. These animals share water. You put a drinker there or a drinking point. The uninfected one can drink, leave the germs there, infectious agents there. When the normal one comes, the same can happen. It can get infected. Then it can also, these different diseases can also be spread through some blood-sucking organisms. For example, the ticks. Ticks can spread diseases. It sucks blood from animal A, then it goes on to suck blood from another animal B. In such a case, disease can also spread. Then the other way through which disease can spread is through excreta, through dung and urine. For example, if an infected animal drops dung on the compound, that dung, since it is infected, it can be having germs which can get into other animals that are healthy. Okay? Then can also be through soil. Remember, some of these pathogens require the soil to complete their life cycles. So diseases can also be spread through the soil. We shall be looking at that when we are looking at life cycle of things like the ticks. Because ticks, apart from spreading diseases, they also cause. Okay? We shall also be looking at that. Then diseases can also be spread through contaminated equipment. Yes, contaminated equipment. Like the syringes, the hypodermic syringes that we use for vaccinating these animals, for administering injections. If not carefully done, this equipment like the syringe, those hypodermic syringes can spread disease from one animal to another. That's why even in human beings, it's not advisable for us to use the same those injection syringes. It's supposed to be a one-time thing you use, you discard. Whether you're brothers or sisters or relatives, it's not advisable to use one syringe as a family. It's the same story here. So, but for the case of these animals, we are not going to keep buying syringes for each animal. So what you do is a simple thing you can do. If you cannot manage to buy for all the animals, after using, please disinfect. After using, you must disinfect. Okay? Then the other way through which diseases can spread is through now this one is a funny one, but it's a very serious one. Clothings of the people who work on the farm. Your clothings. If you have workers on the farm, their clothings can carry some spores of some diseases. That's why, for example, if you go to big poultry farms, they don't just allow you to enter like that. When you reach there, they have to first dust you. In some cases, even leave your shoes there. It's a precautionary measure. It's not for nothing. The purpose of doing that is to ensure that diseases are not carried. For example, now, let's take an example. As a school, we have visited someone's poultry farm. We have gone to a poultry farm somewhere, maybe like we have gone to Yugachik. We want to see how they run their activities there. We cannot just leave school and reach there and begin entering their brooders, and the different poultry structures. They will first have to ensure that we are clean. Otherwise, we can carry our diseases from here and take to. I'm not saying that we have diseases, but you never know. Okay? Then other diseases can also be spread through mating. Yes, there are diseases that are spread through mating. Remember, I told you animals mate. They mate and they do not have sex. Animals mate. We said mating is for purposes of reproduction. Okay? And it is natural. When the season reaches, the animals have to mate. So there are some diseases that are spread through mating, and we call these diseases that are spread through mating, I hope you remember, we call them the venereal diseases. Venereal. Diseases that are spread through mating, we call them venereal diseases. So we have diseases that can be spread through mating, and they are what we call the venereal diseases. Okay? They are diseases that are spread through mating. So, there are many ways through which diseases spread, but I wanted us to have a proper understanding of how, at least some ideas of how diseases are spread. If you are stuck, if you cannot exactly remember this, remember we are also humans. Try to look at how diseases spread. If you are living as a society, if you are living as a community, or you are living as a group, how do diseases spread from one person to another? It's not much different from how diseases spread from one animal to another. Now, once we get a proper understanding of how the diseases spread, it is easy to avoid the spread of diseases. I hope that is clear. Okay? If you know how a disease spreads, you can easily avoid or prevent the spread of the disease. Okay? Now, for example, we said, disease can spread through dung and urine. So what you need to do, ensure that there's proper sanitation on the farm. Animals should not just keep dropping dung anywhere and you leave it there, because that can act as a route for spread. We also said, I was giving an example here, that we can isolate. Okay? If you find that an animal is sick, put it aside, treat it before you bring it back to the others. If an animal has died of a particular disease, okay, get the body of that animal, the carcass, and dispose it in a proper place. Don't just leave it there, because it can act as a route for infection for the others. In some cases, by the way, we say that you bury. You dig a hole, you bury, but many of us don't want to do that. But it's the right thing to do. Dig a hole, bury. If you can't do that, what the other thing you can do is you can burn the carcass. Burn the carcass. If a bird, you can be having your big bird there, maybe you are keeping it for a special day, then it gets a disease. Please don't be tempted to eat it. Remember, we said there are some diseases that are zoonotic. They attack both human beings and animals. Now you eat a bird because you took time to take care of it. It has become diseased. You eat it, you can also end up getting diseased. Okay? How do you avoid the spread of diseases? Now, when you are introducing animals, please get animals from a good source. Get animals from a good source. Only get animals that are tested, animals that you are sure have not just recovered from disease and are not diseased. Don't just go and buy animals from anywhere. The other thing you can do, restrict visitors on your farm. Remember, we said clothing of these visitors, their shoes, etc., can carry these disease-causing pathogens. They can move the pathogens from one area to another. What do? You limit. I'm not saying that stop visitors, because stopping visitors is quite hard, but limit. And those that have come, okay? And those that have come, what do? We try to ensure that they pass through the right procedure so that they do not bring infections on the farm. Okay? Then the other thing, to avoid the spread of these diseases, especially the zoonotic ones or the contagious ones, please, you do not slaughter diseased animals. Let's not slaughter and consume animals that are diseased. Okay? Do not consume animals that are diseased. Don't slaughter, whether you are tempted like what. Remember, some of these diseases can attack you or us humans as well. So, let's not be tempted to slaughter animals that are diseased and consume such products. Okay? Then, the other thing we can do, we can try to boost immunity of these animals by vaccinating them. Once you vaccinate these animals, chances of them first becoming diseased is going to be limited, and once that happens, then the spread of disease is going to be hard, because if one animal becomes diseased, the others can be able to resist the disease in case it wanted to attack them. Then the other thing you can do is also to destroy the disease vectors. Now, what we call the vectors are those organisms that spread disease. The vectors, these flies. Okay? Once we can do that, then our chances of avoiding spread of disease are very high. Okay? So, after looking at how these diseases spread, we have seen how you can avoid the spread of the diseases. I would like us to think something about the effects of diseases. Effects of these diseases. Why is it bad? Why are these diseases bad? Are they good? They are bad. Of course, they may be having their positives. Some people may say the diseases are good because there are things that they may do, but we are not interested in this. We are more interested in the what? In the negatives. Okay? We are more interested in the negatives. Why are these diseases bad? What are their effects? What do they do? What bad things do they do? Okay? What bad things do they do? What are the dangerous effects of these livestock diseases? So let's run through some, because we are moving steadily, which is good. So the effects of diseases. What do they do? Diseases reduce the rate of growth. Okay? They cause retarded growth. Now, retarded here means like growing at a reduced rate. An animal that is diseased is not going to grow at the same rate like an animal that is healthy. Now, to you as a farmer, or to you as a person who is keeping animals, it's not good to have animals that are growing slowly. You may be asking yourselves, why isn't it good? It's quite obvious. Remember, we said that as proper farmers, we need to spend as less money or very little money on these animals as possible. Our objective is to put in less but earn more. But if the animal is growing slowly, you are feeding it, you don't see where the feeds are going. Okay? You are feeding the animal every day, morning, around midday, in the evening. And for those who can manage, there are those who provide feeds. Animals have access to feeds 24 hours, which is a good thing. It is only a good thing if such an animal is growing. Because we know very well proper feeding affects growth rate. Once the animal is growing, once it is growing well, responding well to whatever you are giving it, that one is not a problem. But if the animal is diseased, it is going to grow at a slow rate. And once it grows at a slow rate, that means if an animal was supposed to reach what we call slaughter weight. Now for different animals, especially the cattle, we have what we call slaughter weight. Now, the animal is supposed to attain some weight before you can take it for slaughter. If the slaughter weight, for example, is 500 kilograms, let's say, this is just at a minimum, okay? This is low. Usually, slaughter weight is more than this, but let's use this as an example. If the slaughter weight for a particular breed of animal, maybe breed A, is 500 kilograms, and if the animal is growing slowly, it is having a retarded growth. If it's supposed to attain this slaughter weight in 2 years, because of the retarded growth, it can attain this weight in 4 years. Okay? And that is loss. You're spending a lot of money on an animal that is not growing, which is not a good thing. Okay? So one of the effects of disease is retarded growth. Animals grow slowly. At the end, you end up spending much more on these animals than you would have spent. Then two, the other effect is poor quality products. Okay? No one would want to get or buy products from an animal that is sick. First of all, it's not allowed. From the Animal Act, it's not allowed. You're not supposed to sell products from diseased animals. Okay? So if an animal is diseased, for example, it's suffering from mastitis, then the milk it is going to give you is going to be of poor quality. Okay? Then three, still related to the quality, the products, we have talked of poor quality. Related to that, we also have low or reduced quantity of products. If the animals are diseased, remember we said if an animal is diseased, the body processes will not be functioning normally. And what will happen, take an example, if it is diseased, the process of milk synthesis, the process of manufacture of milk by the udder is not going to proceed normally. And what will happen is that very little milk is going to be made. So you'll get less of the products. Take another example, if it is poultry, if the birds are diseased, for example, if you have been getting, let's say, 30 trays per day, 30 trays of eggs per day, when your birds are normal. Once they become diseased, you will be very lucky to get even 15, just 15 trays. And you can see the loss created here as a result of disease. Okay? Then these diseases can also make animals become poor at converting what they eat. Okay? Converting what they eat into products or translating it into growth. Once the animals are diseased, what is going to happen is that they will have a poor feed conversion rate. I was talking of something here. You are feeding animals, but you do not see where the feeds are going, because the animals will not be able to utilize the feeds well. An animal that is normal, when you feed it on a balanced diet, you can look at the animal and you see a proper response. Then the other thing that can happen as a result of disease is death. And the animals can die. Death. Once disease becomes serious and you're not taking proper precautions, you're not treating, maybe not, okay, sometimes it's not because you don't want, but you may not have the resources. Then what will happen is that the diseased animals end up dying. Now, who is going to buy an animal that has died? I, for one, I can't buy, and I've just told you it's not good to buy animal, to consume animals that have died of disease. If you have been doing it, please stop, because you end up suffering from what? You will suffer from some of these zoonotic diseases, or even very dangerous infectious diseases like the anthrax and the like. You have to be very, very careful. Okay? Then there are cases where, remember, we are looking at effects of disease. Now there's a disease that is called foot and mouth disease. We shall look at it. Now the foot and mouth disease can cause lameness. Foot and mouth disease. It can cause lameness in animals. Now remember, if you are keeping these animals, for example, for purposes of doing farm work, we at the beginning of this branch of agriculture, we categorize the cattle according to purpose. We said we have dairy, we have beef, we have dual purpose and work type animals. And one of the qualities of a good work type animal is that it's supposed to have sound and proper feet. Sound and proper feet. It should be able to move freely. Now take an example. You have your good oxen on a farm. They are doing some serious work. Then they end up suffering from the foot and mouth disease. You have not treated the disease. Maybe you do not have the resources to treat. The animals have become lame. That is going to affect your farming programs, because maybe you are relying on those animals for activities like plowing and the like. So disease can cause lameness, which is not a good thing. Then some of the diseases, especially those that attack the eyes, can also cause blindness. The animals can become blind. And once the animals become blind, then they have challenges, because it is going to be hard for them to sense where feeds have been provided, where to go and where not to go. So blindness can also be a bad effect there. Okay, and some of these livestock diseases, for example, the mad cow disease can cause madness in animals. There's what we call mad cow disease. We shall be looking at that. Mad cow disease. It can cause madness. And you understand what madness is, so I'm not going to talk much about that. Then diseases also, the other economic effect is that they increase the cost of farming. Diseases increase the cost of farming. Increase the cost of farming. Now, what you're calling cost of farming here is the money you spend in your farming activities. Money that you spend in the farming activities is what you call cost of farming. Now, how do diseases increase the cost of farming? Remember, you're spending money to try to control them. You may be hiring an expert, maybe a vet doctor, to come to your farm to try to ascertain, okay, the condition of your animals. So, as a result of that, you're spending a lot of money, and because you're spending a lot of money, you're increasing the cost of farming. And once the cost of farming increases, your profit levels are going to reduce because you're spending a lot. So your profit margin, or what you would call here the gross margin, is going to be reduced. We shall be understanding more about the profitability in our agricultural economics. Okay. Then in livestock improvement, we talked about something to do with the breeding efficiency. Breeding efficiency. I don't know whether you remember that, but we talked about breeding efficiency. Breeding efficiency. Now, breeding efficiency, in simple terms, we say this ability of a group of animals to reproduce, multiply, and increase in number. Ability of a group of animals to reproduce and increase in number. That's what we call breeding efficiency. Now, diseases, some of these diseases have a negative effect on the breeding efficiency on farms. They interfere with that ability of animals to reproduce and increase in number. For example, the venereal diseases. Diseases that attack mainly the reproductive systems of these animals. Now, such diseases can end up causing things to do with infertility. I hope you remember what infertility is. Then there's what we call sterility. Infertility and sterility. Remember, we said infertility is temporary inability of an animal to reproduce, while sterility is permanent inability of an animal to reproduce. So, the venereal diseases, those diseases that are spread through mating, have a serious effect on the breeding efficiency, ability with which animals can reproduce and multiply, because they end up lowering the fertility and sometimes even cause sterility. And once that happens, then the breeding efficiency is going to lower. And once the breeding efficiency lowers, breeding efficiency lowering is not good for a farmer. Remember, our objective is to have these animals so that they can reproduce. We all want our farms to expand. We want our farms to grow. So, if the breeding efficiency is low, chances of animals multiplying is going to be limited, and once that happens, then we're on the dark side. It's not good for us. Okay? So, there can be many other effects of diseases, but I'll just try to point out some that I found more very interesting. So, you can find others, but these are some of the effects of diseases. Now, these effects, someone can say, describe some of the economic effects of diseases, things to do with money. So, describe some of the effects of diseases on livestock. Someone can say, describe the effects of diseases on a farm. Okay? So, if they talk of a farmer, you need to know. If they say on livestock, what do diseases cause to livestock, should be able to do that. You should also be able to analyze the effects of diseases, the economic effects of these livestock diseases. They are not good because we spend a lot. Okay? Most of their effects are really very negative. Okay? So, after looking at all this, remember, we introduced what a disease is. Now we are making a summary because we are coming towards the end of our lesson. We introduced what animal health is all about. We said animal health is basically the well-being. We studied about the well-being of these animals. Okay? And we said an animal is said to be in good health when its body processes are proceeding normally, and when everything is working according to plan, things are proceeding the way they are supposed to proceed. Okay? And after that, we said in case the body processes don't proceed as expected, we said the animal is diseased. Okay? Now, we looked at things that show us that animals are in good health. We looked at those signs of good health in animals. And I told you any deviations, any things that go against those normal ones, we call them signs of ill health. I emphasize that we prefer to say that animals are ill or of poor health than saying that they are sick. So, someone can, maybe something little there, someone can decide to tell you, to outline some of the signs and symptoms of diseases in livestock. Signs and symptoms of diseases in livestock. Once you encounter such a question, don't get so much worried. Just remember that the signs and symptoms are not that much different. Once you know the signs of good health and poor health, then you can be able to come to this. Okay? So before you meet in the next time, I want you to think about general signs and symptoms, regardless of the disease. What signs and symptoms cut across? Okay? Once you are able to do that, then that will be good. And also, try to think about general methods of controlling diseases. If you can be able to think about some general ways of controlling diseases, regardless of the disease, general, then that will be good. But our main emphasis, the next time we meet, we shall start looking at immunity. We shall discuss this immunity aspect in detail and try to find out what exactly it means, and we shall proceed from there. So for today, let's end here. You take good care of yourselves.